as I was growing up, I heard that my mother wasn't able to breastfeed me because she didn't have enough milk. So back then I thought, yeah, that makes sense because my mom has a small cup size, so there's just probably not enough space to store enough milk for a baby. But while preparing for my own birth, I started to ask her more about her breastfeeding journey. And it turned out it wasn't that black and white. So first of all, she used a manual breast pump, which is very tiring and you have to be really persistent. And there was another reason, my grandma. So my grandma had babies in the 1970s where the formula milk was aggressively advertised. She believed that the formula milk is actually better for the babies because this was the modern alternative to breastfeeding. These campaigns affected my grandmother's choices, therefore my mom's choices, and therefore my life as well, because I wasn't breastfed because of them, like 2 generations later. When my mom's milk production didn't kick in those first days, my grandma rushed to the supermarket claiming that this baby is starving, so she bought formula milk. And since my mother was just tired and confused about babies like all of us are in the first days, weeks, months, so my mom just trusted her own mother. What's wrong with that? You think it's nothing? You can trust your own mother, right? Yeah, so my mom trusted her own mother and started to give me formula milk, and there's no surprise that her breast milk supply just stopped, gone, and that was it. Bye-bye. Because the foundation of breastfeeding is simple. If there's enough demand, there is going to be supply. It just takes time. The biggest question in those early days, weeks, that how can we give enough demand? Because babies, like beautiful newborn babies, are eating slow. Some of them, because I also heard stories about newborn who could eat 3 minutes flat every single time and it was enough for him. But for example, with my baby, so he was eating 1 hour, 1.5 hours in the first 3 months. He was a bit slow eater, but that's totally fine. There's no better, there's no worse. They're just different babies, they're just different mothers. How can you give this extra demand is actually with pumping. So this is where the breast pumps comes handy. So I use this electric medulla pump, and also I use the double version of it, because it just makes life a little bit easier because we don't have time to do first one and then the other one. No, so I just did 2 at a time, and it just makes the life a little bit easier, which we all need, especially in those first days, right? How did I make sure that there's enough demand to start the milk production? A day after I gave birth, I started to use a breast pump in the hospital because the nurses recommended me to do that. So every time after breastfeeding, so first I put my baby on my breast so he could practice breastfeeding, and afterwards he was done. I used a 50-minute starter program on the breast pump. So there was a medulla breast pump, and it has a starter program that stimulated the rhythm and the intensity of a newborn baby trying to suck. I remember those early hospital days where I spent 20 to 30 minutes breastfeeding him, then get up from the bed, do the pumping for 20 so do the pumping for 15 minutes, then clean the pump and measure the amount that I pumped, and I also had to write a journal. So it was a very long process, and I did this 8 times in 24 hours because my baby was very small and he had to eat in every 3 hours. Since he was very small when he was born, it was crucial that he didn't lose too much weight, so we had to give him an extra amount of milk. In the first couple of days, when I didn't have enough breast milk to offer him, we gave him formula milk, and that's totally okay. There's no shame whatsoever offering him some formula milk in those early days when it's necessary, when your milk production still hasn't started yet. But the key is to keep stimulating the breasts. For some women, this sometimes later, when the milk production will actually kick in, could be even 3 weeks or more. So you just really have to be persistent, and you just really have to try and try. In my case, after a few days, my milk production started. I was able to pump enough for the amount that he had to eat. And while it wasn't a full bottle, don't think about having a full bottle pumped in those first months, in those first weeks, no. So you should think about more like a teaspoon amount of milk. So I was also very surprised, because I thought, yeah, I'm pumping and then I could have a full bottle of milk very quickly, but no, it was just like this tiny. And yeah, afterwards I was pumping like this amount usually. So this is 35 milliliters amount. Yeah, but in those first weeks, this one is completely enough for the baby, because they have just this teeny tiny marble size stomach. So that's perfectly fine. I constantly consulted the nurses in the hospital, and later on the healthcare visitor who came to our house every week to see that how's my milk production is growing and if my baby has enough. And I hated writing to that journal, but it was necessary for us to see how it is going. So it was necessary to monitor and to see if we are going into the right direction. Eventually we reduced the 15 minutes of pumping first to 10 minutes and then 5 minutes, and by the time when my baby was 3 months, I altogether stopped the pumping because my supply had stabilized. I honestly thought that breastfeeding will come naturally for my baby and for my body as well, but I realized that it takes lots of practice and learning for both of us. I used to believe that my mother didn't have enough milk, but now I believe that she didn't have enough support, because breastfeeding can be incredibly challenging, especially without guidance. So if you live in a country where the doctors and healthcare visitors pay huge emphasis on breastfeeding, that's great. But if you're not, I'd recommend you look for a lactation specialist, because support and guidance can make the difference. Breastfeeding feels hard because it is hard, not because you're doing something wrong, okay? It will come. So if this video helped you feel a little more confident or just a little less alone, I am very happy. And if you could just share with someone who you think also needs it, that would be great. And I just wanted to say that you've got this.